Hello and welcome to Visionary Voices, powered by Optimum Healthcare IT, our conversational thought leadership podcast where digital and technology healthcare leaders come to talk about their latest transformations, their latest innovations, and successes at their organizations. I'm your host, Larry Kaiser, Chief Marketing Officer at Optimum Healthcare IT, and I'm excited to bring a season of new leaders, new ideas, and new conversations with people shaping the future of our industry to you, our listeners. And with that, let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this episode of Visionary Voices. Today we're joined by Matt Kull, EVP and Chief Information and Digital Officer at Inova Health. And recently from U.S. News and World Report, Inova was rated the #1 hospital in Virginia and is Northern Virginia's leading nonprofit healthcare provider. Matt is a seasoned leader in digital innovation and organizational transformation who has been recognized nationally for his leadership, including the 2022 Ohio CIO of the Year. He's been voted the Northern Ohio CIO of the Year as well, received the Hims Davies Award, and a newly minted Chime Board of Trustee. So we're excited to have him on the podcast today. Today, we're going to be discussing IT governance and organizational efficiency. Matt, thanks for joining the podcast today.
Larry, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Awesome. So we're going to kick things off today with our usual first segment, which we like to call Bandwidth Banter, which is our fun take on icebreakers and allows us to kind of get to know our guests a little better. I'm going to ask you probably, it was a big commercial for a long time, but are you a Mac or PC guy?
Mac, all the way. It only took one blue screen of death during a presentation to make me convert, and I'll never look back.
Yeah, I'm a Mac guy myself. My brother actually opened the very first Apple store on Long Island way back when, and I have been sucked into the ecosystem. So I could never get out if I ever wanted to.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Like my first order of business when I got to Inova was making sure that Mac was a designated standard platform. Many people were very happy about that, including myself. So it's been a long time since I've touched a PC.
Same. Yeah. Thankfully, my whole marketing team, we use Macs and we're very happy about that. So, all right. So I appreciate that. Obviously, we're good there. Let's go pop culture. Is there a character from a television show across your lifetime that you most relate to?
It's kind of ironic, but Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
He always used like his wit and cunningness to navigate the world. He was really sharp. He always had something that was like quick of the tongue. Also, he loved wine. So hard to argue with that. Like myself, like I'm always a big root for the underdog fan. I like broken things. Like it's fun to fix things. And, I think a little bit like me, he's always good for a really cynical one-liner.
I can't argue that. All right. And then there's one thing I wanted to talk to you about this because it interests me. I know that you're quite the audiophile, and I have heard across the healthcare IT multiverse of your very elaborate setup in your home for music. Are you vinyl or are you more digital? How do you like to go with that?
I'm both. I prefer vinyl by a long margin. I've been collecting records for a very long time. They're kind of fascinating when you think about it, because not only is it just another way to portray music, but it's analog. You don't have a lot of sort of the digital harshness. The thing that is most favored by people who are really into vinyl is not just the sound, but the fact that you listen to an entire album.
Yeah.
In digital, you listen to playlists. In digital, you listen to some algorithmically created thing of songs by lots of artists that they think you're going to like. And in an album, you get between 2 and 5 songs per side, and you listen to them from end to end. And you sort of get into the story of what the musician is trying to say with their entire album. And until you're listening to vinyl in that way, or listening to whole albums even digitally, you miss a lot of the fact that there is a narrative that's happening in the music from front to back.
Yeah.
Also, I think people miss out a lot from a digital perspective on the actual vinyl cover itself. They call it a gatefold if it opens up. And there's stories about the musician and the people who've helped with it and artwork. And in many cases, there's photographs of things that have happened during the production of that album. So I definitely am biased that way, but I like them both.
Yeah, I've been, off and on vinyl since I was probably in my early 20s, and my wife is big into it. So we go. My daughter is 6, so she's gone with me to record store day twice a year for the last 3 years or so. And we go to this really great little independent down in St. Augustine. And I stopped getting in line a long time ago. I'll just kind of show up, 9:30. We didn't get the title I was looking for this year. I was kind of bummed, which was the Billy Joel live on Long Island from like 1980 something, I think, because I used to have the little cassette bootleg back in the day, and I really wanted it. But my daughter has come to really enjoy the outing with me, and there's a song by Pearl Jam on their newest album called Wreckage. And the lyric on the song goes, "We're going through the wreckage." And when she sings it, she says, "We're going to look through records."
That's awesome.
And she asks for that song every time we go down to record store day. So yeah, I like both. There's nothing really beats pulling that vinyl out, looking at the liner notes. I kind of miss doing that with CDs, to be honest,
Yeah.
as
And
well. So
there's kind of a funniness in my house about this because my wife can tell me that I can hear the difference between two speaker cables, but I can't hear her from the other room. I don't know what she's talking about, but she seems to
yeah,
laugh about it quite a bit.
yeah, yeah, my what was it, like 9 or 10? My 9-year-old nephew is quite the audiophile right now, and he plays with these things. Like, oh, hey, I did this today, I did that today. And like, I can't even hear a difference anymore. But hey, if you enjoy it, then go for it and have fun with it. So, well, awesome. I appreciate you participating in this little banter section here. And we probably should sit down over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine to discuss music some more in the future. So, but our listeners are here to listen to us talk about something with healthcare IT. So let's dive into our conversation about governance and IT efficiency and go from there. So,
Certainly.
what does a successful governance model for decision making look like for you as a CIO, CDIO?
So I have potentially a different approach to decision making in the organization than maybe many do. Um, the technology comes last every time. I look at the system office and whether it's finance or marketing or our philanthropy team or even our legal and HR teams, at the end of the day, we're sort of here to support the clinical enterprise. Our product is a NovaCare. What we do is deliver care to our patients in our communities. And to do that, we allow our physicians to drive how we're going to enable that care. Part of that is them taking on initiatives to improve care. But there's a lot of education and a lot of learning and a lot of mindset setting that has to happen ahead of the clinical enterprise making these decisions. And what I mean by that is my job is to help enable them to understand how digital capabilities can assist them, how to rethink workflows, how to unburden busy work so that providers can focus on the things that are of highest value to our patients. And then that trickles down, right? Whether it's revenue cycle or it's HIM or it's any component all the way to supply chain. How do we enable people to make appropriate decisions that can be enabled by technology? And so that governance looks like this at Inova. We start out during our annual planning, which happens in the last quarter of the previous year, where we look at what are the big rocks that we want to move. And maybe it's inpatient throughput, peri-op optimization, build a new hospital, from the whole gamut. And then we come together and determine which elements of system office services have to go with that. Is it a marketing component? Is there a plan and design component? Is there a technical component? And then those work groups go off for each of those initiatives and determine sort of what's the rough order of magnitude around effort and cost, et cetera. And then we prioritize that so that we come into this fresh year with a set of priorities that we can achieve. Often, I think governance fails to say no or to be somewhat realistic about what's achievable throughout the year, both in the ability to deliver and also the ability for end users and our constituents to consume. So we look at from a technology governance is not the governance structure. It's organizational clinical governance. What is the clinical enterprise governance doing for the organization? From my perspective, it has to start there. If it starts in, here's our digital strategy or our technical strategy, I think we're starting in the wrong place. What is our business strategy to deliver care in the best way possible to our communities?
Interesting. So that's a very, very specific way of doing something, and I can definitely appreciate that. So looking at the recognition that Inova got from the Joint Commission for being the first in the nation to achieve responsible use of health data, do you feel that your way of doing and executing that governance is played a key role in that recognition from the Joint Commission? Or, is it just that in order to the process that has to be in place that ensures that the data is being captured in ways that's usable for everything in care coordination is reflective of the governance, or is the governance reflective of that?
Larry, I think it's both. And the
Okay.
reason that I say that is so part of the accreditation is appropriate use. And to use patient data, there's really some very clearly identified reasons for using health data. Either you're using it for quality improvement to improve outcomes and improve care. You're using it for research to improve therapies or invent therapies or identify potential therapies. Or you're using it from a perspective of doing business. Having the structure around that says the clinical enterprise is going to determine sort of these things that we work on and how data is going to get used. We have a subcommittee for artificial intelligence and data governance and standards and usage. But then coupled with that is a whole structure of procedures, making sure that we have things encrypted, making sure that we have, if it's research, that there are appropriate IRBs, if there's quality, that the data is destroyed at the end of the quality exercise, if we're partnering, that there's minimal use, that there's right of revocation. All of those things sort of play into the structure of policy and procedure underneath the structure of governance that says these are the things that we're going to do within our guidelines. And having that fully enumerated and having that documented and policies in place and followed and audited and accountability structure on top of that, that's really sort of the thing that the Joint Commission is looking for. Is the use appropriate? And when using it, are you using it appropriately?
That makes sense. And obviously, governance plays a huge role in that because it's outlining exactly how you're going to go about executing it, using it, and moving down that line across the board. So, all right. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. So for someone like you, or someone that a person, a CIO, CDIO type of individual goes to a new organization and that environment doesn't have a true governance model.
Mhm.
What's the mindset that they need to have to strategically shift the organization to a governance model like you outlined that Inova has in place to achieve success?
I would say there's three things. The first is the organization has to understand what its priorities are, because everything comes from that. If you look at people who do really structured annual planning or people who have like a 3 or 5 year vision roadmap, the work that we do on a day-to-day basis that is not regulatory and not safety, but the true strategic work has to be tied to that annual plan or that sort of vision roadmap. Because the things that you do around that, adjacent to that, become distractions from achieving the goals that you have as a organization put in front of you as the most important. These are the digital, or these are the organizational, or these are the workflow, or these are the financial imperatives for the organization. And where the rub is that holding yourself to a high level of rigor to focus on that and not be distracted is absolutely not only the most important thing, but the most difficult thing to do. Because in healthcare, there are lots of great ideas, but are they aligned to the organizational strategy? Are they aligned to the work that we stacked hands on that we were going to do at the beginning of the year, halfway through the year? And I'm not suggesting that it has to be so rigid that we can't change priorities, but the business priorities and the business strategic framework and the business strategic roadmap has to be looked at in total. Because what you plan in this sort of priority structure, you looked at as a whole thing and you said, this is what we can do, and this is what we can adopt, and this is what we have a high likelihood of success to achieve. So I think that's one part. The second part that is absolutely critical is that you have a structure for new requests to come into, and for a group of people, small or large, however big your constituency of people you want to be governing the throughput, have to again have that rigor to go back to the plan and say, okay, this is a great idea, but does it align with our plan? And if so, then we should consider it. But if it's like, this is a really good idea, but it's not where we as a business want to go, having the fortitude to say, not now, is got to be paramount to the governance structure you're doing. And look, and if the thing that comes in is not in the plan, but it should have been, or it's a new development, or somebody came up with a new therapy or a new cure or a new device that is incredibly important to your patient population, then you have to have a mechanism for going back and looking at the strategic plan. Because if you're saying yes to a lot of things that are not necessarily in your strategic plan, good ideas, but not imperative, then you're pulling resources away from the thing that you said was the most important thing for your organization. And the wonderful thing about Inova is the leadership team sort of goes together. All of us see ourselves sort of in this duality of, not only am I the technology and digital leader, but I'm also general manager of the organization. And so when the general manager over technology also has a concern for finance and for marketing and for supply chain, we go together because we're all sort of interdependent, and we get that. So that's two. I think the third thing is being comfortable with sometimes the pivots. As I've mentioned, some things are going to show up mid-year that are going to absolutely rise to the top because of a market condition, a competitive condition, a reimbursement condition, a financial concern, or frankly, just a big opportunity. And you have to be really comfortable as a governance team to say, okay, look, what we decided last week was really good last week, but today this thing is better, and we're going to put last week's thing on hold. Because the highest and best use of our labor, of our resources, of our humans, of our intellectual capacity is really to focus on this new thing. And we all agree to that. And so if you can get those three things right, having a solid plan, having the fortitude to stick with your plan, and the comfort to potentially adjust if needed, those three things are paramount to solid governance structure at an enterprise perspective. Now, you can go a level deeper than that, and we can have a conversation about how technology is governed, like architectural review and cyber review. But I think those are sort of the easy parts, right? Like, we're all pretty good in this business at delivering technology, but it's delivering business solutions is where like the hurdle is. How do you get everybody on the boat rowing in the same direction to deliver something that provides really good value to the business users of the organization?
That is some fantastic advice. I love it. So what I wanted to kind of just dig in real quick on there was, you used the term, the rigor to pivot or accept the pivots. Um, so when one of those opportunity comes up to make a pivot, how do you have principles, or we'll use our principles that yourself or maybe the whole leadership team that Inova uses to determine what those best outcomes could be if you are if you are needing to make a pivot? And how do you decipher the value of, I'll use the term innovation, but it could be something more than an innovation when it gets to that conversation of, hey, we have to make a pivot here. What drives that?
I think there are questions you have to ask, right? And they're not my questions. These are sort of standard strategy 101. And it's like, can we win at this thing we're trying to do? Does it provide value to our mission? Is it more than just a good idea? Is it something that will advance our cause? Um, do we have the resources? Is the opportunity cost at the margin worth it? Like, again, and it goes back to that's a really great idea, but the other things we're doing are more important. Yes, we should absolutely do this new thing, but at the margin, this new thing doesn't have as much value as the things that we're doing. Or this new thing has so much value, we should stop something else. Or we should make additional investments, whether that be into resources or attention or whatever it is. Are we willing to put up additional cash to do this other thing as well because it's so important? And it goes back to, can we be successful at this? Does it make a difference to our community? Do our stakeholders benefit from this? The people who consume our services, will this make their life better? And will it make it better to such a degree that the other things we were working on are now not as important? Because it's really easy to pile things on, right? But if you go back to the initial sort of governance structure, there's two components. Can we dedicate the resources to it, whether that's cash or people or services or whatever? But the second piece is, can we adopt it? Because there's this fine balance between going fast and pushing and pushing and pushing, and adoption fatigue from all of the stakeholders in the environment. And, you know, it's easy to deliver things. We can always, for lack of a better word, I mean, we can always throw money at stuff. You can bring more services in. We can bring more consultants in. We can bring more labor. We can do anything that there's money for. Delivering the thing is like half the battle. The other part of the battle is, can we adopt it? Do we have enough adoption energy left in the fuel tank for all of our users? And at Inova, there's 27,000 people that get impacted every time there's a change. Like, do we have enough adoption gas in that tank to actually get them to adopt it? And if not, what are we going to take off the plate? And it's not just about like how much is in the roadmap, right? Like, if you look at the healthcare landscape today, like flu is amazing right now. And amazing is the wrong word. I mean, flu is very prevalent right now. We're seeing volumes in our hospitals that are higher than we have ever seen. People are getting sick, and whatever the flu is this year that's going around, it's new and improved. And so, do we have to ratchet something back during that period as well? Could we adopt something else now? Probably not, because we've got people calling off because they're sick. The caretakers that take care of the sick are also sick. We would actually slow things down now, because the imperative shifted from the thing that we're delivering to giving our teams the space they need to take care of our patients. And so that piece is always a balance.
Yeah. And when the people aren't in place to help the people that are sick, you're going to have your ER gets backed up, everything gets backed up. Elective surgeries get no longer elective because they're closed because there's no one there to do it. So yeah, I can see that, and that balance is definitely tough.
Well, and Larry, I think the
And
thing to remember also is that it's the nursing staff being able to consider their current state is probably the most important, because they spend the most time at the bedside. They have the
Mhm.
highest amount of change that occurs to them, like with everything that gets deployed. And so managing that and that fatigue is completely paramount to making these kind of decisions around what level of adoption can people take in this moment.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the key takeaway from me there is that it's not just about technologies. It's not just about dollars. It's not just about, you know, the time commitment. It's also about the people,
It's
and
always about the people.
the people always come first.
Yeah.
And if you don't take care of your people and make sure that they have what they need, whether that be resources, tools, or just time,
Yeah.
you're never going to be successful with it.
You hear this thing called people, process, and technology all the time, but I think it's people, process, optimization, technology, sort of in that order. And of those, the tech is the easiest.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree. Especially, obviously in healthcare, there's a shortage right now when it comes to nurses. There's a shortage when it comes to doctors, because people are getting burnt out, and people are retiring, and there's not another new wave of, freshly trained, freshly schooled individuals coming into it right now.
The numbers are staggering when you think about this. So, 1 in 4 primary care doctors are going to retire within the next 10 years. There's going to be 48,000 primary care slots that are needed to be filled, that are going to go vacant by 2032. You couple that with increased disease management burden for chronic diseases that are, we're turning end stage diseases into chronic diseases, which means people are living longer, but they require more management. You have a population that has 46, 47 million people between the ages of 60 and 90 today. And in the next decade, that's going to go to 75 million people between those ages. And between 60 and 90 is when you consume the most healthcare.
Yeah.
So you've got a 45% increase in your customer base, and you've got a 20, 30% decrease in your provider base. It's a really complex problem that, if we can all agree on those sort of statistics, technology really becomes the only answer. But technology for technology's sake doesn't work, right? I always joke, you take your current business, your old business, and you put new technology on it, and the only thing you did was make your old business more expensive.
And of course, as AI continues to evolve, whether it's, conversational, generative, agentic, and any other terminology they want to throw in front of the word AI. I mean, it's going to get more complicated before it gets more simple. And, eventually, hopefully we get to a point with those statistics you just mentioned where AI can shoulder some of the burden of the shortages that clearly the country is going to have.
There are going to have to be some mindset shifts that happen before we can actually capitalize on that. But I do believe that those utilities that you mentioned are going to fill the gap. The problem is that we've got to sort of get out of this pilot mentality of cool technology and move to making these agents part of infrastructure, no different than the plumbing.
Yeah.
And to do that, that's really about hardwiring into operations.
I like it. Well, I appreciate your time today. I want to thank you for joining our podcast, Visionary Voices. Any last insights or comments you want to share with our listeners around the governance topic we discussed today?
I think the other aspect of governance has to be about sort of questioning the norm, right? So too often governance is just the gate to say, can we do it? Should we do it? But I think governance has to shift into, are we just rebuilding the thing we had, or is like our perception of how things should be our current reality, and can we shift that at all? I think there's a really, actually, I know we are at a really interesting time where long-term norms can be reevaluated. Just because we've always handed patients paper when they come to check in to fill out forms that they inevitably filled out online the night before, do we have to keep doing that? And I think governance has to evolve to something that questions everything from is this the right workflow? Have we optimized enough? Have we gotten rid of the stupid stuff that's in our processes before we're applying anything? Because true governance is going to have to be a thinking partner, not a gate.
I like it. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate that extra insight. I'm sure our listeners appreciate it. So thank you again for joining. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Visionary Voices, powered by Optimum Healthcare IT. And remember, the future of healthcare IT starts with your vision. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Larry. Good to see you.
Thanks, Matt.